Could be from
Okay. Oh, yeah. I thought that was butcher shop.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Monday, October 1st, 2018 City Council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Condon.
Here.
Alderman Devine.
Here.
Alderman McHenry.
Here.
Alderman Curry.
Here.
Alderman Schaefer.
Here.
Alderman Glad.
Here.
Alderman Santee.
Here.
Mayor Jeff.
Here. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'm going to be reading a proclamation recognizing Rotary International's polio eradication efforts and identifying October 24, 2018 as World Polio Day in the city of McHenry. It reads as follows. Whereas Rotary International, founded on February 23, 1905 in Chicago, Illinois, USA, is the world's first and one of the largest nonprofit service organizations. And whereas there are over 1.2 million Rotary Club members comprised of professional and business leaders in over 35,000 clubs in 200 countries and geographic areas, and whereas the Rotary motto, service above self, inspires members to provide humanitarian service, encourage high ethical standards, and promote goodwill and peace in the world. And whereas Rotary in 1985 launched Polio Plus and spearheaded the global polio eradication initiative, which today includes the World Health Organization's U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, UNICEF, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to immunize the children of the world against polio. And whereas polio cases have dropped by 99.9% since 1988, and the world stands on the threshold of eradicating the disease. And whereas the Rotary is currently working to raise an additional $50 million per year, which would be further leveraged for maximum impact by an additional $100 million annually from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Whereas these efforts are providing much needed operational support, medical personnel, laboratory equipment, and educational materials for health workers and parents. And whereas in addition, Rotary has played a major role in decisions by donor governments to contribute more than $8 billion to the effort. And whereas the Rotary of McHenry support and sponsor services projects to address such critical issues as poverty, health, hunger, illiteracy, and the environment is the community and abroad. Therefore, I, Wayne S. Jett, Mayor of the City of McHenry, do hereby proclaim and recognize October 24, 2018 as World Polio Day in the City of McHenry and encourage all citizens to join myself and Rotary International in the fight for a polio-free world. Thank you. And Derek, would you like to?
Yeah, I'd just like to introduce John Hadley. He's the president of the Rotary Noon Club here in McHenry, and Chief Burke and I are Rotary members. Chief's in the Sunrise Club, and I'm in the Noon Club. And I took the liberty to put some additional materials in the council's packet that came out of the latest Rotarian magazine about polio and Rotary's eradication efforts around the world. And I mean, it's an important international project. We obviously do local projects, community projects, and regional and national projects, but polio for a long time has been a major effort for Rotary International, and we're so close, that close to eradicating it around the world, and much of it's been because of the efforts of Rotary International. So thanks for the opportunity to recognize October 24th for Rotary.
Thank you. Would you like to take this with you, sir?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to make a public comment at this time? I see none. Moving on to the consent agenda, items 6A through 6D. Is there any items, bless you, from council that you would like to pull for separate consideration? See none, I'm looking for a motion to approve the following consent agenda items 6A through 6D. Alderman Curry?
So moved.
Second. Alderman Santee?
I'll second.
Discussion on these items?
Just a question, I guess, the 6A is written as an amendment, so that takes care of the fact that we had already passed something earlier. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
Okay.
exactly,
All
that's
right.
how we intended
Yeah.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Curry.
Yes.
Alderman Santee.
Yes.
Alderman Glad.
Yes.
Alderman Schaper.
Yes.
Alderman McHenry.
Yes.
Alderman Devine.
Yes.
Alderwoman Cap.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. The next item on the agenda is a discussion regarding Article 3, raffles, sections 12-64, and prizes. I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Chief Burke. We've had some conversations with, some other parties regarding this, and I think it's a good time to have that discussion, and I know Alderman Curry has also brought it up. So, Chief, take the floor.
If I had a microphone, I'd push my button.
Oh,
I don't. That's okay, I'll talk loud. The reason it was brought up for an item of discussion is, as council knows, they've raised the they've raised the price for the prize a couple times now, and the police got involved in helping the VFW work through their event. I believe we rose from $1 million to $3 million to $6 million on the prize payout, and it ended up successfully ending with the winner a couple weeks ago. We did take the time to meet with the VFW earlier today, just to try to start the process of having a conversation with them, how they're gonna do with the next game. But before we really dug too deep into that, we wanted to bring it as an item of discussion back to council to get their feedback and input on how they felt the ordinance was currently written, and if they would want staff to look at making any amendments specific to the dollar amount of the ordinance.
So we'll go ahead and start it off by council. Any discussion, Alderman Curry?
Well, just a comment. I think that obviously the raffle was very successful for the VFW, and I think that's a great thing. But I know that we got a little bit of an issue with handling traffic and residents around their businesses. Once it get, I would say probably. Well, I'm talking the total raffle now. We'd increased it to 10 million, but I think by the time I got to 3 million, it was already a problem, which would have $1.5 million payout, or roughly something like that, $1.8 million. So I guess, yeah, I'd like to see us at least as a first step, and is bringing it back to the last. I think it should probably come back to the last place it was before we raised it the last time, which was I guess it was $3 million payout, and it was a $5 million total purse. I mean, I think that one might be a good first step to take a look at. So.
Thank you. Any other discussion, Alderman Santee?
Yeah, I would be concerned about the total in regards to the payout. Was there any kind of discussion or come to any consensus this afternoon with them in regards to a number, a maximum number?
That Councilman Cardo and the mayor and I were there also. It was just a couple of the representatives from the VFW that we met with today, and they've taken a break to catch their breath after the raffle, and have not had an opportunity to have discussions as a group, about moving forward. So I think the timing was good. Chief Burke and I had made it clear to them that we wanted to have a conversation before they got into those discussions to express our concerns from a city aspect. And again, we threw this out there as a topic of concern, and they're going to start the process. They have a full board meeting, I think, tonight, but there's a committee or a subcommittee that deals with the raffle that they haven't had an opportunity to meet to even discuss moving forward yet. So really, where we left it with them was expressing our identifying the topics for the raffle, and saying that we were going to have this conversation with council tonight. We would get back to them tomorrow on kind of where council was at, just as a general consensus on a direction in regards to the prizes, and they'd be able then to take that into their discussions as a VFW for consideration. And we said we'd obviously continue to work with them and have discussions with them to help them work through the topics. So that's kind of what we left it with them. There was no definitive one way or the other, or we just kind of expressed the topics or identified the topics and left it at that for now. And we don't expect the two of them, that we met with to speak on behalf of the whole VFW. They're just kind of the messengers to take back the topics.
Is the January date, in their mind, a hard date to begin again?
No.
No, it isn't, okay. So
No,
that's-
some of the points we talked to them were, there were some questions about online sales, there was some questions about when the next game would start. So that, these are questions that they have to work through, and then if they have questions, they have to bring back to us. We brought up some topics, reference building occupancy, parking capacity, overall security, and then date and hours of ticket sales. So those are all things that they're gonna start discussing with their board too, to bring back to us to make sure that it's whatever the next event does start, that it's something that's manageable.
So they would be coming back to us with some type of proposal, okay?
Correct.
Another question I have right now is the parking lot, is that scheduled to be built out at some point?
They did tell us today that their intention was to build out the next phase of that parking lot before winter. So sometime in the next couple of months.
Thank you.
Alderman Schaefer?
It was reported in the Northwest Herald that the American Legion was also going to be holding their own version of this. Had they approached the city and discussed this at all? Because they have a very limited facility and very limited parking.
Yeah, they, actually in August, they got a permit for a similar raffle. The chief and I actually have a meeting scheduled with them tomorrow. The biggest difference in theirs is that, and they identified this in the raffle permit, that they would only be selling tickets one day a week during a limited period of time. And, but obviously we contacted them right away to make sure that we could set this meeting up before the raffle started, and then to kind of talk through, any issues that they foresee or any issues that we foresee with it. I guess this is a reminder, and the VFW reminded us of this today when we met with them, that it took them 2 years to get to the point where they were at right now. There was a time where it was, they thought $32,000 would be a big payout, and then they had the Joker, I think, turnover one time, and I don't know all the rules to their raffle, but there was a number of circumstances that were kind of the perfect storm for theirs to get to where it's at today. So I think where it was a couple of weeks ago, and obviously we want to be cognizant of that as we talk through the American Legion and what they want to do, but theirs is a little bit different in scope. So we'll express our concerns to them and just kind of monitor that as it moves along.
One of the other changes too that council made at the last amendment was defining the time limit for how long one of these raffles can be held, and it's at 12 months. So any raffle from this point forward that's run can only run for a period of 12 months. Before in a raffle like this, they would be forced to do a drawdown as well. And it was a nice reminder on the VFW's part. It took them 6 months to get to the $32,000 mark. So the dollar amounts that they've been producing the last few months of their game were not something they saw in the first 12 months of their game.
But they are starting at $3.5 million.
Yeah.
They are starting at $3,412,059.
I stand corrected.
Which is a 60% payout of
Which now is
$2,047,235.
Right, I'm just saying it's not gonna take 6 months to get to 32,000, since they're already at 3,400,000-some.
Any other discussion on this item? Alderman Condon?
I agree with Alderman Curry. I think we need to really evaluate the total amount, but the reason for that, and it may be the same as Alderman Curry's, is because of all of the hardship that it puts on the city residents, let alone the staff, especially the police. I just don't think they're, as great as it is to have people coming into our community literally from other states. The traffic there was just a nightmare, not only for a citizen driving through that area, but especially for the businesses along, on either side of the VFW. So certainly that's a concern. So I guess, and I don't know what the magic number is. I mean, I guess I would even be okay with 6 million, but I think, you know, I don't know what that magic number is, but whatever the number is, it has to be backed up by, you know, I think they did a great job of finding accessible parking, but then no one thought about, okay, all the people walking along the roads, and then our police force did a phenomenal job in directing traffic, and I heard time and time again, Chief, that, you know, that the officers were wonderful, so please forward that. But, you know, the security and the building capacity are, you know, obviously that has to be taken care of. And my concern about times of sales, that would be great to limit it, except then are the lines gonna get longer, and then what kind of backups is that gonna, so it's a, you know, we're in a catch-22. So I don't know what the solution is, but I do think we need to really have a plan before they move forward, because like Alderman Schaefer said, they're already starting with a large pot. So I don't think I don't think would be hard to say that there's gonna be people coming from all over again, right off the bat, as soon as this one starts. So, because the jackpot's already large. So, I guess I don't know if staff has recommendations, but, I guess before they start, I would like to see a well thought out plan on how to address these things, because I think we now know what the issues are. We didn't know. I mean, I don't think anyone could have expected what that raffle created in our little town. So, I would love to see a plan.
Thank you.
I think it's safe to say that they, at least the two that we met with today, and you know, understand what some of the topics were and share some of the concerns.
Sure.
And you know, they've already started discussions about how to address those concerns. But again, without having the opportunity for them to discuss it as a group, you know, they didn't want to speak out of turn either. And it was just kind of ideas and brainstorming at this part amongst the group of us. And so kind of the same reason we're coming to council, they're going to their board to get some input too on it, and just kind of some thoughts. And we'll touch base with them again here in the next week or so, and get a better handle on where they're at as a group.
Alderman Glad?
I just wanted to say that, number one, the VFW has always been a very community-minded structure, as far as the organization, as well as a good place for a lot of local residents to meet and greet, as well as ball fields and everything else that they've supplied. Where you can really get excited about the revenue that they're bringing in, which does wonders for, opens doors for things that they probably never even thought of that they could do. However, there's always a downside to it, and that's the fact that the services that they gave to the community have been diminished a little because of the crowds and everything else. So I've got a lot of reservations of, you know, even if, let's say, the Queen of Hearts lasted 6 weeks, and you're still probably looking at what, it probably still bounce back to $1 million start. How long is it gonna take for it to get back down to reality? As far as if somebody pulls the Queen of Hearts in a short period of time, you know, and then you don't know. I mean, it could last just as long as this. It does impact the community. I don't think the council is aware of exactly how much of an impact to the police department. I'm surprised the chief hasn't pulled all his hair out. Just trying, I mean, you did a great job as far as shifting everything around to make sure that we could accommodate the police that we needed. But again, I still worry about the fact that the VFW, as it was, I'm sure still wants to provide the services they always did. And I guess one of the questions I have is, if we were to reduce it, the amount at this time, I mean, if we don't do anything right now, they could continue on to, what is it, 10 million?
Yeah, it'd be 6 million payout.
6 million payout. So, you know, I guess the question is do we wanna reduce that in a short period of time before things get underway? And I think, we have a couple weeks before we have to discuss it in another council meeting, and that should give time to have input from the chief and the rest of staff, as well as input from their board. And I think, a real good solid plan of not just how they're gonna open up the doors in January, but where is this thing gonna go down in the future? And I think that's what we need to look at is where are those impacts to the community? I mean, it was a huge impact this time. Hopefully the next time won't be quite as bad of an impact, and I'm not saying you don't want them to do well, but, I don't think the community wants to see that kind of traffic every single week, you know, the rest of their times in McHenry. So I just think, it's something that needs to be looked at from all points of view. The council, the staff, and the board over at the VFW. And, I think we need to have another discussion on this before we come up with any positive ordinance changes or anything else. But I really think to some extent, we do need to move on this before January. I mean, you know, and upfront of what the city feels so that expeditiously they can plan out ahead where they wanna start in January. And again, where we all know where we're gonna be in, let's say, 6 months or a year from now.
And they're, you know, with meeting with them today, they agree. I mean, there's a lot of things they need to work through. They have tons of volunteers they gotta talk to see if the volunteers are even wanting to come back. I mean, there's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts. And also they don't want to, you know, harm the baseball and, you know, and a lot of those things that are going on there. So, I think it's, you know, give them a few weeks, give us a few weeks to kind of go through that. I say we come back with some kind of detail on the 15th, our next council meeting, to kind of give some ideas. But I will say it's gonna take them some time to come up with that plan. And nothing's gonna happen until we discuss it, and we also, you know, they're not looking to start this game without us changing some things. So if that makes sense. Alderman Schaefer?
That would definitely be something to discuss with the American Legion too, because I think a lot of the people are the same. So I don't know how they're gonna have two of them running with the same group of volunteers.
Right. Yeah. Chief?
I would just say that, you know, they made it really clear to us that they know they've got, some changes they need to make. They have a lot of work that they need to do and a lot of research they need to do. I know they'll have a few board meetings probably to work out some of those decisions, one way or the other. Specific to a lot of those conversations on how do they wanna conduct the next sale, when do they wanna conduct the next sale, how are they gonna address our, you know, our concerns about building occupancy, this time around, you know, how are they gonna sell those tickets? So we gave them all the topics to talk to, and I would believe that this is probably something they're not gonna be able to put together and bring back to us, that we would then have in time to bring back to you on the 15th. That's why we asked for the meeting this week. We basically gave them a week to catch their breath. And we were anticipating maybe a January, because that's what everybody was reporting, that was January. So the goal was to try to get us an update so we could bring a plan back to you long before January happened. But even now, at this point, it doesn't sound like they're going to move forward with the January date. We gave them, you know, a bunch of concerns with this as well. We can't direct traffic for 10 hours a day, 6 days a week in the middle of the winter. We can't have people crossing an icy major highway if there's ice or snow on the ground. So the additional parking that they had the luxury of during the summer months, they won't have that luxury of that parking during the winter months. So they understand the complexity to try to run this event in January as well too. So my guess would be probably maybe the first meeting in November we would be able to bring something back that had a detailed understanding of what their plan would be, and then a recommendation to council on on where to go with any changes to the ordinance as well.
Thanks, Chief. Alderman Glad?
Yeah, I guess one of the things I want to just mention is the fact that, we take the limit up, we can't do it just for one, correct?
Right.
So, however, is there, and I guess we throw that out to the attorney as well as the rest of the staff, is there any way to regulate this as far as how big each raffle can go, as far as how many attendance or whatever, the size and nature of each individual spot? Just throwing out suggestions out there that we look at all the avenues. I mean, you got the VFW, you got the American Legion now talking about it. When's the PNA gonna come in? When does it be the churches? I mean, it could snowball to where we've got them all over the place, and
Nobody's gonna wanna sell Tootsie Rolls anymore.
and the chief's gonna have to hire 14 more people just to work them all for the charities. I mean, like I said, I think we need to look at and I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but we are leaving the door open for those type of possibilities, and we need to look to see what's the best way to regulate all that.
Any other discussion by council? Alderman Condon?
Just for clarification though, they did reimburse for.
100%.
Okay,
Yep.
I thought so, I just wanted to.
Yeah, they didn't even blink it. They already paid their August payment, and they just got the bill in the mail the other day for their September bill.
Okay.
And we told them that today, and they didn't blink an eye. We're appreciative.
Wait, in which they should.
Thank you.
Alderman Chaper?
Just one other thing that I thought about when the chief was speaking to, I was, when they changed their hours recently to end sales at 8 o'clock, I was there one evening after 8. I think the parking police force worked until 9 or around 9, but there were still people crossing after the police were going. So that was something that I thought of that I was gonna mention to you beforehand, so that was something to consider too. They probably, and some of them are elderly people too, so.
Yeah, and we did
And
discuss
I know
that.
I'm not expecting the police to stay there all night long until those cars outside of the VFW are gone, but that would be concerning, I think, to them.
It was.
Okay, just, I didn't know if they knew that, so, thank you.
Alderman Glad?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that's a good point that Alderman Schaefer brought up. What the intent was and what happened, and again, you learn by your experience, but maybe they just need to close off those parking lots a lot earlier and post that they're gonna, in other words, you can park there for the raffle, but it has to be removed by a certain
Later
time.
on, they were closing those lots off with some barricades that we had provided them, so people didn't park there to try to avoid that. The best part that we got out of this whole thing was if there's one location in town, a charity location to run an event, the VFW is the largest in town, and it does already have the largest capacity, plus it's on a major highway. So it's a good opportunity for us to look at how this impacts if somebody else wants to do it, because if we can't sustain it there, we definitely can't sustain it anywhere else. And that is our whole focus to bring back to council is to make a revision for the ordinance that applies to any charity in the community, and it will work for them. And by having basically the VFW run this, it was a perfect opportunity for us to actually evaluate, because if we couldn't do it on 120 and we can't do it with 14 acres, we can't do it on Riverside Drive where there's 0 parking, and we can't, so these are all the things that are going through our minds to make sure that we can address as we bring a plan for a revision to you.
Thanks, Chief.
I back up to the school field and we have enough room.
Pardon me?
Never mind.
Yeah, well, we can't, they have to run the event at their location.
Right.
The law will not allow them to go to another non-for-profit location, or another location that's not a non-for-profit, so.
Anyone else? Okay. All right, moving on to staff reports. Is there any staff reports this evening? And mayor, city council comments, I have nothing. City council, any comments? Executive session, I would ask that everyone in the room would exit the room for executive session regarding probable litigation. And property acquisition.
Or I guess property sale.
Everyone?
Property sale.
Which one is it?
Disposition.
Property sale. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Condon.
Yeah, oh, I need a motion.
Oh,
Motion to go into executive session?
Yep. Alderman Santee, second. Alderman Devine.
Thank you.
See if I can-
Alderman Santee.
Yes.
Alderman Devine.
Yes.
Alderwoman Condon.
Yes.
Alderman Mahavik.
Yes.
Alderman Curry.
Yes.
Alderman Schaper.
Yes.
Alderman Glad.
Yes.
Thank you. All right,
Yeah, you can see.
let's go ahead and do a roll call whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Chief.
Alderwoman Condon.
Here.
Alderman Devine.
Here.
Alderman Mahavik.
Here.
Alderman Curry.
Here.
Alderman Schaper.